Hello, everyone, and welcome to our October event on careers in data science. I'm Sharzad, and I'm part of the LA team for Women of MENA in Technology. I want to welcome all of you for joining our event tonight. We have an amazing list of speakers. We have a great moderator, and we're really excited to have you all and listen to what they have to share with us tonight, but also ask a lot of questions and get the opportunity to network with the rest of the folks that are on at this event tonight. So I just want to take a little bit of time to tell you all a little bit about Women of MENA in Tech for some of you that may be joining this event for the first time. Women of MENA, standing for Middle, East, and North Africa in Technology, is a nonprofit organization. And we have more than 17 city teams at the moment all around the world. And our mission is to advocate for women's equality and for inclusion and diversity in the workspace. We organize these events every quarter, and we have really great professionals and speakers coming in and sharing their expertise with us. But we're really excited for the community and the sense of community and sharing that we also create as part of these events. So I would love for all of you to read more about the programs that Women of MENA in Tech offers on our website. I put the link over on the chat, so please feel free to click on it, learn more, reach out to me and my colleague Yasmin if you have any questions or if you want to get involved, volunteer, advocate, anything you want to do to make sure that we're all advocating for this great cause. I also want to let all of you know that we have a conference coming up. Our virtual conference is going to be November 5th and November 6th. It's all going to be virtual, so you can attend from anywhere in the world. You can invite your network. I also put the link here on the chat. If you have any questions about the conference, how you can attend, sponsor, volunteer, please let me know. I will also put our information on the chat shortly so you can reach out to us directly. I know you are all excited to hear our speakers and to dive into this topic. So what will happen is that I will exit the stage and then I will invite the moderator along with our panelists to join the stage. We will have our panel until about 7:25, and that's when we will then switch to Q&A for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will leave about 25 to 30 minutes at the end of the event for networking again. So if you've never used Hopin before, to your left, you will see the sessions. That's where you can click at the end of the event. And then if you want to connect with one of the speakers or you want to hop in and network with everybody, you will see their pictures. You can enter that room and turn on your video and network, ask questions, also exchange information if you want to continue speaking even after the event is over. You also have an opportunity to network with attendees. So we'll also have another networking session that you will see also in the list of sessions where you can also just connect with your peers and just learn more and expand your network. So with that, I would love to give a little bit of background about our moderator. So our moderator tonight is Dr. Marjan Sherafati. She's a data scientist with a master's degree in computer science and a PhD in engineering from USC. She has 2 years of working experience with machine learning and optimization research in a startup environment and more than 7 years of research experience in quantitative modeling. So with that, I hope you really enjoy the panel tonight. Please feel free to ask all your questions on the chat. What will happen is I will gather all these questions, I will organize them, send them to our moderator in the backstage, and then she will get to all of your questions at the end as part of the Q&A. If you have a targeted question for one of our speakers, please just mention that in your chat. This question is for Hoda, and I want to ask her that. So then you get a more targeted answer from the panelists that you're hoping to get the answer from. If you have any questions about navigating anything, just let us know in the chat. We'll be moderating it. And with that, I will go ahead and have our moderator come in. You might have about a 30-second awkward transition that will happen, but stay here. We'll be right back. this will work.
Yeah, sorry about that again. So I'm going to go ahead and ask all of our panelists to start introducing themselves. Baharan, John, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself? Sorry about that.
Sure. So yeah, thanks for having us. I'm Baharan Kamousi. I'm the head of the data science team at a medical device startup company called Ceribell. And my background is electrical engineering. I got my PhD in 2009, and I started working at a medical device company called St. Jude Medical. It was later acquired by Abbott, so you may have heard the name. It was a big company. And after that, I decided to switch to startups. So I worked at 2 different startups, Element Science, and currently at Ceribell.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Baharan. John, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hoda. I lead the data science team at Brex, which is a fintech company. Prior to Brex, I was working at Stitch Fix, leading different machine learning and data science teams for 5 years. And prior to that, I had my own startup, and I worked at a genomic startup. And I have my PhD in computer science from MIT.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And then Farah, could you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. So my name is Farah. I'm currently a senior data scientist in the quality department at Edwards LifeSciences. So my job is to automate quality engineering processes, and to do that, I use mostly programming, Python, or different tools depending on the project. So Edwards LifeSciences is also a medical company, so we make cardiovascular devices, and that comes with a lot of paperwork and a lot of documentation. So having a data science in the quality team definitely helps automate and monitor all these processes. And prior to that, I was doing actually a lot of freelance work. I also used to work for Kaiser Permanente, and prior to that, I was in my graduate program. So I had my master's in information systems and decision sciences from Cal State Fullerton. And yeah, I don't have a PhD yet, but that's gonna come soon. But yeah, that's pretty much everything about me. Prior to that, I was in college first for international relations, then I switched to computer science, and here I am, information systems and data science. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Farah. And we have Sayantan. Could you please go ahead and introduce yourself, Sayantan?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Shantan, and I did my PhD from Baylor College of Medicine, and it was on flu virus actually, which is very relevant at this point of time. So and during the end of my PhD, I was serving as a data scientist for a forensic accounting firm. But as my background was in biology, I always wanted to work in that space. So I joined Insight Health Data Science Fellowship, and there actually my project was really a fun project. I was working on a health tech app, and I was trying to improve their customer subscription. And I was using various kind of machine learning models, uplift modeling, and so on. And after Insight, I joined Humana as a senior data scientist. And it's one of the biggest health insurance company, and there's a lot of data, a lot of challenges. So it's really fun working there. And additionally, at this point of time, with this huge thing going on in the healthcare, so I think there's a lot of challenges in this space. So a lot of rooms to grow as a data scientist as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I wanted to start out. So each one of you here has a very different and diverse background, and you are doing very diverse set of things. So I think because data science is such a broad term and it's used for so many different job descriptions, I think it would be nice for our audience to know what your day-to-day duties and responsibilities are like. And if you're working on like any interesting projects that you can talk about with us, it would be nice to hear, to like get an understanding of what the data science work looks like in each of these divisions. I don't know, like Baharan, do you want to go first?
Sure. So, I'm working in medical device startups. So everything I'm doing is related to, the medical field. And it basically, as I said, like data science is a very blanket term. What I'm mostly doing is designing classification algorithms for medical application. And it involves a lot of signal processing and machine learning, but it's also bigger than that. So I'm basically using data science, machine learning, and signal processing as a tool to design these algorithms. So if I want to give you an example, the company that I'm working on now is in neurodiagnostics. So we have designed a headband which we like to call rapid response EEG. So our input signal is EEG, and then using this EEG, you can design many different algorithms for different indications. One example was seizure detection. So, it was a long process, but we are using basically the final product we have right now is a machine learning algorithm that runs on the EEG data that comes from the headband, and then it gives the indication to the physicians if the patient is in seizure or not.
That's very impressive. Thank you very much. Hoda, would you like to go next?
So I work at Brex, which is a fintech company, and we're a startup. We're a Series C startup, and our differentiating factor as a business is how we're able to underwrite new companies. Traditionally, founders have a really hard time getting credit and getting access to credit, and because we leverage algorithms to underwrite founders, we're able to give them credit. In terms of my day-to-day, I personally don't do any more hands-on work with respect to data science. Rather, my role is more strategically, how do we think about integrating data science into the business? What are areas in the business that could, for instance, benefit from algorithmic capabilities? And I think more about organizational problems. What the data science team at Brex currently works on is a mix of credit modeling. So how do we underwrite customers? How do we forecast their spend? How do we detect fraud? Fraud is pretty key to any fintech company. And then beyond that, for instance, in my role, how do we think about integrating algorithms in operations? Can we leverage algorithms in our customer support so that we can kind of switch the business model of our customer support or from one that's a cost center to one that drives value. So these are the kind of questions that I think about and the sort of problems that I think about.
Thank you very much. Now, Farah, would you like to go next?
Sure, of course. So as I mentioned previously, I work at LifeSciences, and we manufacture cardiovascular devices. And being in the medical field, that entails, a lot of paperwork, a lot of medical compliance that you have, to comply for. And quality engineers in in medical field and other fields sometimes don't have the technical knowledge to go to a database and fetch all the data they need for their research or for their task. So my job is technically just to make data easier for them, right? Get it from the database, streamline it, store it in a, somewhere where they can easily access it, easily read it, and easily download it. So that's what I do. And depending on the project itself, I use different tools. So sometimes I would use Python. Sometimes, just SQL Server reports, create a report and have it sent to someone's email directly. That could also work. So I think from my experience, being a data scientist doesn't just mean to stick to a specific set of tools, but just to cater to the organization's data needs, from a general perspective, right? Because I have a lot of, stakeholders from other teams that are not from my, direct team asking me for help. And, our company culture is very collaborative, so if someone else comes from a different team asking you for help, you can't turn them down, right? So that's also not part of being a data scientist, but you also kind of, I think, just automating, the entire quality process, not just across my team, but also to different teams. And the main tools I use are probably SQL Server, reporting services, analysis services, Python. I did practice some R back in the day, but I've been using Python for the past 4 years just because it's much easier and much more efficient. You can do statistical computation as well as data transformation. So that's another thing that I do a lot, transforming reports. And other tools would be Power BI, Tableau to create reports. And I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Awesome. And Sayantan, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. So as I was mentioning, like I work for a health insurance company. So the kind of Humana's motto is like inspire health. So the idea is that we collect a lot of data, like for any kind of companies, and now how to use this data to improve the patient's health. Like if we can clearly see some kind of flag that this kind of situations make a patient go into hospital multiple times, can we figure out a critical point when we can intervene and improve their health condition so that they don't end up going to hospital, because multiple time going to hospital is not going to help them. Or there are certain trigger factors that can eventually cause any kind of issues with the behavioral health, stuff like that. And then there is that is one part. And the project I was working on was to sometimes scale up the models. It can be a time series project or something like that, because there is various kinds of disease we are looking at. Disease progression is something very interesting, and there's a lot of research going on in this field, and that is something I also work on. So about tools, mostly it's like I use Python, PySpark, because there's a lot of data, huge data. So I have to use the distributed system, and eventually a dashboard like Power BI to present the results. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And so a lot of people right now are switching from their own careers to data science. A lot of students in school are thinking about picking data science as a career path, and it's been called the sexiest job of the 21st century. And so let's spend some time talking about the future of data science. So Baharan, what do you think, where do you see this whole field of data science going? And what do you think is the outlook of data science as a career for all of the people who are pursuing it right now?
So, I think as we go into the future, the companies will have access to cheaper and more reliable ways to get, to collect more data and to store more data. They will also have access to cheaper, faster, and stronger computational power. So I would say the desire and the need to extract knowledge and all these data will just grow in the future. The tools we have now may change. So I don't know if we're going to use Python or not in 10 years from now, but I would say the demand for a person who can use this information and turn it into something valuable is here to stay and will just grow.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree with that. Sayantan, I wanted to ask you, so this question actually came up in the networking session. So what kind of backgrounds are more suitable for people to switch to data science? Is it only engineering backgrounds who can become data scientists, or a lot of other people from other backgrounds can do it too?
Well, yeah, to answer your question, background, a diverse background is always welcome, because data science is not a specific field. There is various niches and various small domains in it. And so traditionally if you look, people with the maths, statistics background are really preferred. Of course, computer science is required. But I have seen many people working, have a PhD in physics, working in healthcare, or someone like having remote sensing as a background, working in another totally different field as a data scientist. So there are diverse fields are okay until and unless that person is willing to learn. Once they go into a different field and learn it fast. Uh, like take my example, like my PhD was on virology, structural biology, computational biology, and I am working on a healthcare field, but things are different. Things are not what I used to work on, so I have to learn that. So also, if you think about people with linguistic background, imagine. So there has been people with linguistic background doing very well in the NLP field because they have a intrinsic understanding of that particular field. So like overall, I think data science is an interdisciplinary field, and people with diverse backgrounds are always welcome. And there can be crosstalks and swaps based on the background, but just willingness to learn. And it doesn't matter even if the background is matching, then also there should be willingness to learn, and that solves most of the problem.
Thank you very much. So my next question is for Hoda. Hoda Jan, is it so? Like we had this question actually again come up in the networking session. Is it necessary to have a PhD? Does everyone who like practice data science have a PhD, or is it at all necessary to have a degree in this area?
Absolutely not. What a PhD basically is that you learn a whole lot about something very minute. But what it enables a lot of PhDs to do is handle ambiguity very easily, so they can handle open-ended ambiguous problems, but it's not an exclusive kind of club. Like a lot of master's students, people with bachelor degrees are perfectly capable of entering the data science field, but as with most data science problems, there's a little bit of an R&D component to it in the sense that you have open-ended problems. So I think it's not so much whether or not you have a PhD, but whether or not you can handle ambiguous open-ended problems and being able to solve them is more important.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Farah, I had a question from you. So like you talked about all of the tools that you use in your day-to-day job. So like I wanted to ask, like, what kind of tools and techniques do you think is necessary for people to like enter this field?
I think, well, to enter data science, you need at least one computational statistical language, either Python or R. I personally use Python, but a lot of data scientists use R as well, and that's fine. And then within these two, programming languages, there are a lot of libraries or packages that you can use. So all the basics, data transformation, all the basic machine learning libraries are, to know. And sometimes, in school or, in college, in grad school, there's not enough time to cover all of those. So it's very important that I think, data scientists learn these on their own personal time, because it's very important. It will save you a lot of time if you know those, beforehand. So definitely one of these two languages, and then of course all the business intelligence tool set. So I use a lot of the Microsoft suite, so Microsoft Power BI, Microsoft Flow, Power Apps. So these are a lot of tools that we kind of incorporate into, the solutions that I provide. So if you probably understood by now, I don't do a lot of the modeling, machine learning yet, depending on the project, because all of my projects are short-term projects, so 2-3 weeks. And depending on the project, there's going to be a different tool. So choosing the appropriate tool is also very important. And other than that, I would definitely recommend being familiar with one database connector, either SQL, Oracle, MongoDB. So anything that's being used by the company you want to apply for. So that's also very important. So my recommendation, going through the job description, finding which technologies that the company is using. And if you don't already know them, get familiar with those. But yeah, definitely R, Python, and then some BI tools. Tableau is one of them as well. So definitely those.
Thank you very much. So my next question was like somehow answered between the other questions, but Baharan, I wanted to ask you, like, is it important to have the subject matter, like how much subject matter expertise is needed for getting data scientist jobs? So like, for example, can I work in healthcare if I've never like worked in healthcare before and don't know that what healthcare data looks like?
So, I would say more than the subject matter expertise, it's important to have the interest and the passion for the specific application that you're going to work in. If you really have the interest and the passion, you'll pick up the subject matter expertise and the knowledge quickly. But if you don't have the interest, it will be very, very difficult, in my opinion, to grow in that sector. So, like going back to healthcare examples, you might be the best data scientist in the world, but if you're not really willing to understand, like about that specific disease or that specific problem, and not just that disease, like also the way it's going, like your algorithm or your product is going to be used by physicians or patients or users, you'll not be able to design a successful algorithm. So I would say more, like the subject matter expertise is always useful, but not necessary. But the interest and the willingness to learn about it is absolutely necessary.
Thank you very much. So Sayantan, you mentioned that you actually took the Insight Fellowship. So there are a lot of online and offline certificates, courses, boot camps, like lots of different institutions doing like these certificates and degrees. Are they useful, and which ones would you recommend if they are?
Sure. Yeah. So Insight is actually not an online course. Just to tell you about it, it's more like a postdoctoral training, and they take the people from academia, trying to make a transition. They kind of like just add that last 5 cents to them and help us transition. About the question that you asked about the MOOCs or the online courses, personally for me, it was really useful. It does not give you credit for college, but it is useful to me. The couple of reasons would be like, when you are doing your PhD, your focus is on a particular thing. You are diving very, very deep, but may not have a holistic understanding on different other topics that is still necessary for data science. So at the time, really identifying where you are lacking, or like what would really cover the gap that I have before I really start my job. I think those courses are really useful because you have such a repertoire of choices. Like you can choose from many things. Like some of the one I can talk to you about right now is Udacity Nano Degrees are pretty good, I've seen. Then there is Udemy. Then there is DataCamp. I have used DataCamp myself. And then Andrew NG, someone was mentioning so that is one of the good courses. And in YouTube, I have also seen there's a guy, I think from Illinois. He was an associate professor. He eventually opened like a YouTube channel called StatQuest. So it's about an advanced algorithm, could be XGBoost or whatever, but he kind of nicely animate it and try to explain it in a very fun way. So it's really nice to even hear about that. So overall, there are several resources, as I mentioned, but it depends on the person that what knowledge gap they want to cover, and based on that, you have to pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask a follow-up question to that. So in terms of like getting certificates for these courses, or like attending these boot camps for the purpose of like putting that on your resume, do you think that is valuable as well? Like all of those certificates that Coursera, for example, has, or stuff like that?
If you ask me, I have never put those courses as in my resume or anything, because I have never done that. I have taken, so for those things for me is to cover my knowledge gaps if I have somewhere. And then I think the best way to show it, rather than just naming that, oh, I have done this course, is to implement it in a real world project and show how have you used it. So again, like end goal is to not to run a model. End goal is to really see a business problem. What would be the ROI to that? How can I use some academic skill sets to that? That is always the critical point. And you have GitHub to run a project and put it there. People, if they are really interested in your code, they will look it up. rather than putting just the lines of certificate. I've done 500 or 10, 50, doesn't matter.
Thank you very much. So in terms of like preparing for a job in data science, Hoda-chan, I wanted to ask you, I know this is a very broad question, but like, what would be the like very important basic skill set that people have to go into an interview for data science?
The term data science is overused and ambiguous and can mean very many different things to very many different people and many different companies. It can range anything from a data analytics role to a research scientist to maybe a machine learning engineer, like the whole span. I can tell you it also depends on how the data team is organized, whether they take a more full stack approach versus like the data scientists only focus on modeling it, a problem and then handing it off to the engineering team. That said, in general, when, for instance, we interview or candidates, and typically for the full stack version, which kind of encompasses the whole gamut, there's 4 things that we look for in candidates in general. So the first one is problem framing. So if you think about the model development lifecycle, it begins with problem framing. There's an interesting business problem that you need to solve. How do you translate that problem into math? Then it goes into model building. So can you, for instance, mock up the problem in a Jupyter notebook and develop some scrappy algorithm? Then you put it into production. So that's engineering skills. So can you put a model into production? How are your coding skills? Do you understand what good systems design is? And then from there, you come back around and kind of think about either experimentation and then kind of sit down with your business partners and think about either changing a strategy or making a product decision at the end. So if you kind of think about the whole model life cycle, it's essentially problem framing, machine learning, statistics, and software engineering for a full stack. Now, if the role is different and it's more of an analytics role, then maybe just SQL and basic modeling skills. If it's more of a research-oriented company, then maybe software engineering isn't as important. So just think about the whole life cycle and like what is the role that you're going for, and then kind of adapt based on that.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much. So another important topic that we want to like talk about is like career growth opportunities within data science and like moving to leadership roles, like moving to management, moving to like director positions, and so on and so forth. So Hoda-chan, I'm going to come back to you. Do you mind like sharing your career journey with us and how you got to the position that you have today? Because you have like experience in management, I wanted to come to you.
I think so. I'm gonna take a step back before talking about my own journey. But I think growth means something very different to everyone, and like what dimension you want to grow in is that's kind of the path that you need to follow. There are people who might never go into leadership or management, and they could be quite successful as ICs. There's many companies now who have separate IC tracks, technical lead tracks, and then engineering management tracks. So based on that, you can kind of decide which one appeals to you and kind of pursue that. So I don't think you necessarily need to go into leadership to become successful or grow in your role. A principal or a staff IC level is pretty strong. So that's one element. My own personal journey, I've always been interested in leading teams and kind of thinking about how data science integrates into the business. More specifically, I worked at, so every company, when you interview, like you kind of the role kind of changes. And so when one of the first companies I joined was a small startup with 8 people. It was a genomics company, helping people predict their chances of breast and ovarian cancer. I joined as employee number 8, and there wasn't much data. And so what you end up doing is like maybe a simple PCA or basic analysis, but I actually ended up spending that year learning about engineering and doing a lot of software engineering at the company, which was great for me because I think it's kind of a differentiating factor as a data scientist. And from there, I moved to Stitch Fix, and Stitch Fix is a personal styling company. What's special about Stitch Fix is It takes a full stack data science approach towards the role of the data scientist. And it's not just a data-driven company, but a data-first company. So if you think about how the company was organized, we had our own chief algorithms officer. We weren't embedded under product or engineering. So what that enables the data scientists to have is a lot of autonomy and a lot of kind of control over their work. So I was there for like 5 years, and because it is a very data-first company, I eventually transitioned into the management role, and I led teams for about 5 years there. And basically, when I joined Stitch Fix, it was a Series C company. It was about 200 people, and it was about to go through that hockey stick growth in terms of finding product market fit, and that's why I joined. And after 5 years, we IPO'd. It was like several thousand people, and so after that, I wanted to kind of take a lot of my own learnings and be able to apply them to a different company. And I was looking again for a Series C company with product market fit, going through a lot of growth. And for me, that was Brex, and so I joined as the head of data science to take a lot of my learnings and apply it to a new company. For me, I think when I think about companies, like there's the small startups and there's the large companies. Larger companies tend to have more specialized roles. Smaller companies, you're kind of jack of all trades in some sense. And for me, that sweet spot is the Series C, because you begin to have a lot of data. You begin to think about algorithms in a more meaningful manner, because usually if you're at a small startup, unless it's like an ML or AI focused startup, you're really not going to be doing meaningful data work. That's my experience.
Thank you very much, Hoda. So I wanted to ask this question from like everyone, but I had this question intended for Sayantan, but like jump in if anyone else has any ideas. So like, what are some of the soft skills and hard skills that you need in order to grow in your career as a data scientist?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So the hard skills are like I kind of described in the first question, I guess, like the computational skills, like having a bit of idea of how to code is like, that is expected from a data scientist, right? That's what my understanding is. Statistics knowledge, machine learning knowledge. So these are kind of like, for a data scientist, I'll say, at this point, those are expected to a degree. And soft skill, that term is very funny, because to me, soft skills are sometimes that separates a data scientist from a very good data scientist. And those are really looked at during interviews. I have been in interview panel, I've seen people who have really good soft skills. They just, you are like definitely going for them because they really, pique your interest. So a couple of examples I kind of stayed in the same term, I guess, like some people are explaining their models and algorithms very well. And then someone so if you ask about a project, they just talk about the models and algorithms they use. Whereas some people are there, they really construct the business problem they're dealing with. And then they'll say, okay, this is what we are trying to do. This is the return of investment. These are stakeholders of the business partner wants to do. And that is why I did this algorithm. That really shows that how creative that person is thinking, and that is where people are going to hire. Like, so it's not like, it's a framework, because somebody mentioned that problems are open-ended and they're going to differ every time. So there is no particular framework you can fit in every, there's a cookie cutter basically, So you have to be very innovative. And that is why sometimes PhDs are preferred, because you have gone through that grilling process of open-ended questions. So I think in the soft skill, people have to understand the overall business. Like, for example, if you're going for a company where maybe, e-commerce company, you should understand what is click-through rate or what is customer lifetime value and so on and so on. So soft skills are given less importance in some way, I think, but I think that has a lot of values and people should, improve on their skills who are right now looking for a new job.
Thank you very, very much. And so my next question, I wanted to direct this question to the female members of the panel. I'm sorry, Sayantan. But data science, like many other STEM fields, is very male dominated. So I wanted to ask you, like, have you ever had any like challenges being a female in this area? Or yeah, like did you ever feel that you were I don't know, like what was your experience of working in this male dominated area? And is there any like experience that you want to share with other people?
Sure. I mean, I can go first. I think when you look at the statistics of how many engineers and how many female data scientists we have, you can't really ignore the problem. I mean, you know that there is a challenge and there's no point denying it. But, I think it's getting better and better, especially in some areas. So my experience is in Bay Area. And I really think it's getting better and better. So my practical advice to women trying to have a career in engineering or data science is, if you already got to the point that you're pursuing an education and you're pursuing a career in these technical fields, don't worry about it. Don't spend too much time focusing about the challenges or the problems. Not that they don't exist. I mean, I'm sure I shouldn't say I'm sure, but you may face it from time to time, but you can decide what to do when you face them. Don't start thinking about it and worrying about it before they happen, because it really is getting better and better. And you can, just let your work speak for itself and be hopeful that you're not going to face a lot of challenges.
Thank you, Baharan.
My advice I have, it's not so much a challenge, but maybe two pieces of advice. I agree to Baharan's point that the problem, like male-female ratios are getting better, but in general, from my observations, women don't tend to negotiate when they accept job offers. And so my advice is to always negotiate. Your male counterparts are typically negotiating, so please negotiate. And my second piece of advice is I've often encountered a lot of women struggle with imposter syndrome in the workplace. And my advice to you on that is that not everyone knows everything. And it's okay to admit ignorance. It's okay to say, I don't know, and I will find out. And I think once you practice saying that a little bit, you'll find that it's very empowering and kind of builds your self-confidence, because it's not so much knowing something, but your willingness to learn it. And I think even in interviews that comes up, you don't have to know everything. It's just a willingness to learn something new.
Thank you, Hoda.
So as for me, I wouldn't say I have faced as like a challenge, being a woman in this field, but I do definitely see that women are heavily underrepresented. Just seeing at the workplace, you see a lot more men than women. That's the number one thing. And then especially in data science, I'm actually the only woman in a team of 8 engineers. So I mean that itself tells something. But I was trying to actually think about it and trying to understand why. And I actually thought about something. Data science is still a very new field, and I feel like a lot of candidates, job applicants are safer going or applying to software engineering, data engineering, or like jobs that are, I guess more well known than what an actual data scientist is. So I'm wondering if that could be one of the reasons why also there are less, women data scientists, because I know a lot of women, software engineers, they all go for the software and computer science. But data science, I wonder why as well. But I personally never experienced any challenge. And I encourage more women to apply and search for data science jobs on LinkedIn, or anywhere else, or through networking. Because, that's, I think, just like the networking sessions that we have today, those could be valuable resources to make connections and, find out about data science jobs.
Thank you. So I have one more question for all of our panelists, and then we can go into the questions that were asked in the Q&A. Do you have any final pieces of advice for the students who are coming into data, who are planning on working in data science, and for professionals who are trying to make a transition to data science? And Baharan, you can go ahead.
Sure. I think, I think my biggest advice is don't get into data science because you think it's hot and sexy these days. Make sure you really understand what it takes to be a data scientist and make sure you're really interested in it. Because, like I hear a lot of people from many, many different backgrounds that are, like they think it's the right thing to do because it has a lot of future, but it's one of the good things to do, but it's not necessarily a good match for everyone. So make sure it's a good match to your interests and backgrounds and you really know what you're getting into.
Thank you very much. Hoda Jan, you wanna?
I'll add on to Baharan's point. So everyone claims that data science is this hot and sexy thing, and everyone talks about deep learning and all these other like neural net algorithms. 90% of data science is just crunching data. You will have to spend time cleaning data. You will have to spend time understanding the data, and your algorithms will only be as good as the quality of your data. Garbage in, garbage out. So everyone says it's sexy, but like it really requires a passion for wanting to dig in and understand what's happening below the hood, to Baharan's earlier point. So if that is not something that like you enjoy, that's probably going to be 90% of your job, and it's not going to be running PyTorch or cool neural nets more often than not. So something to think about.
Thank you. Sayantan, would you like to go next?
Sure, yeah. These 2 points by Baharan and Hoda are really important. And I'll add some points based on the people who are applying for jobs. I'm sure that there'll be some in the panel. So one thing is that, at current scenario, I know the competition is more, tough. So, not to be, a little bit sad if one of the interviews does not turn out fine. It's more important to be persistent. I think that is the key at this point. And because, at the end of the day, you need only one job. And also, I'd like to add that it's very important to also self-evaluate. If one interview did not went well, like why it did not, you talk to some of the industry leaders and see what they're suggesting, and also kind of see like where your gaps are, fill it up. I kind of talked about the online courses and so on. But also on the other end, there are certain experiences that one of the experiences that I had was that you have to keep yourself up to date, because I have one of my mentor from a school who got the job in 2016. He was saying that, hey, I learned Spark and all these tools when I went to the job. And I was I was getting out of grad school in 2019 from my PhD. And at the time for me, I can see that all the jobs are looking for, most of the jobs are looking for HDFS, Spark, PySpark, some kind of skills on that line. And I had some extra time. I felt like, let me brush up my skills or improve my skills on that. And when I was actually looking for the job, most of the jobs ask for the big data skills that I know. So maybe the mentor you have could be there is not on the same timeline. So keep yourself up to date, look into the job responsibilities or the job description, and and aligning your skill set accordingly at times can help for the job search.
Thank you very much. Farah, John, would you like to?
Yes, actually, I do have one piece of advice that I wish I knew when I first started. So we all know that data science is very ambiguous, and then it's an umbrella term that comprises many different tools or maybe other fields. An example would be just data transformation, data engineering, machine learning, and just within machine learning, there's like 100 different models, right? Black box, and so on and so on. So there's all these things that aspiring data scientists think that they need to know, but they don't. So my best advice would be just to kind of pick your battles. So you can't be good at everything. Pick things that you're good, okay at, know a little bit about everything, but be an expert at one thing that you focus on, and that will be your technical strength later on. So that would be my advice.
Thank you very much, Farah John. And now let's thank you very much for your time. Let's go ahead and ask some of the questions that were mentioned in the Q&A. So Negar asks, did you have any personal projects to work on when you were new in your career? or were you focused just on the job that you had back then? And if yes, what kind of projects did you pick, and how did you pick them, and how did you plan for them, and so on? Feel free to jump in. I don't want to.
Okay. I can go if that's it. Okay. So when I was applying for Insight, I was still in my PhD program, and you have like, if you are already having a full-time job, you have to somewhere find time after your day's over, put 1 or 2 hours into it. So yes, I did work on the side projects while I was doing my degree, and like how in Insight, how we are trained, or how they at least tell us to think about the problem is not like get a data set from Kaggle and just make some models out of it. Get the data, try to think about a problem at first to solve that will add some value to a person, and then find the data, not other way around, which is sometimes during projects we do that, like get the data and then find a problem out of it. So I was thinking about a problem where a person wants to add solar panels on their house, and the person could be anywhere, right? And one person's house roof is bigger does not mean you need more solar panels. Someone using less electricity can have less number of solar panels. So I was kind of figuring out, based on how much electricity usage you have and where you belong, like where you stay, based on the solar radiation and whatnot, uh, how big of the solar panel you need. And from that, I was trying to figure out what would be from the state you live in, based on the tax benefit you get and stuff, what it would cost and what would be your break-even point. So eventually, like, I did something funny, like if someone is 70 years old and you have like 20 years to break even, what's the point? But if you're 20 years old, you have 10 years to break even, maybe it's a good investment. So something on that line. So I did this project to showcase my data science skills in Insight, and eventually got in.
Awesome. Thank you. And we have another question from Dina. Are there any remote internship opportunities available in order to gain relevant experience?
Most companies nowadays, especially if it's in the tech field, or if you're in the Bay Area, are pretty remote. I mean, our company is not permanently remote or remote first. A lot of other companies are either currently remote or thinking about moving to permanently remote. So I think if you're looking for a remote role, this is the perfect time, because that's the only way we're all working these days.
Awesome. We had another question that I think we kind of covered, but let's ask it. So they said, like, are there any certifications, like, specifically for data science? I can actually speak about that. So any certifications? No, I can't actually. I don't have the knowledge. So there are boot camps that a lot of my friends have signed up to, like Data Incubator, there's General Assembly, like these places. Insight has a different system, but Insight also has like a 7-week program for PhD students. It's very good. And in terms of like online certifications, I know that Coursera gives out some, but I don't know if they're necessarily useful for you. I think the bootcamps are like a completely different story, but they are very useful in getting you to the position that you need to be to find a job, meaning that you define a project and you learn like how to gather the data and how to present the data. But certifications, I'm not sure. And go ahead.
I was going to build on what you just said. I think part of the reason the boot camps are a little bit better suited is the best way to learn is by doing. So watching a Coursera class or anything else like that, if you just learn the theory. So going back to an earlier point, the best way to learn is just by doing. Put it in your GitHub, as it was earlier mentioned, and like learn it that way, because theory doesn't really stick, nor is it really that applicable to real life.
speak about datacamp.com. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's an online kernel. So I'm not sure. I'm not really familiar with Coursera and the way they do it, but it's an online kernel. So it's a class, but the entire class is held in an online kernel. So you're also typing the commands as you are watching the course, and you have your own, output, input. So it's very interactive. So I've used that in the past, actually in undergrad and grad school, just because I took a lot of programming classes in college, and in 1 hour you don't have enough time to cover everything, so you'll have to do a lot of that, and a lot of that practice on your own and learn, especially for Java, C++, project oriented programming, that's kind of harder to grasp. So I would definitely recommend Data Camp or Leak Code for that reason. And they also give certification. So if they're valuable to the job market, I'm not sure, but they're definitely valuable, to gain skills and, be more familiar with different libraries and different packages. So I would definitely recommend those.
Thank you very much, Farah John. Are there any last minute questions that we have from the audience? We're going to wait for a few seconds for the questions from the audience, and then we're going to go for the one-on-one networking sessions after the panel. Yeah, I don't think we have any more questions coming in. Thank you very much, everybody, for giving us this portion of your time. I think this has been very valuable. I myself learned a lot from your answers, and I hope that everyone who attended got something out of it. And with that, I would like to wrap up this session, and let's go back to that sessions tab, and then go into the one-on-one networking and mentoring sessions.